Good evening, everybody. Hell's Unicorn here, and it's now official. Governor Rick Perry of the fine state of Texas feels that he is called by a higher power to get involved in this weak field of Republican candidates for the nomination for the office of the presidency. Oh, be still, my beating heart. I feel the call of the great and mighty Lord. I must enter the race. It is my calling. Ladies and gentlemen, I have something that I need to share with you all right now. I have been on record on various occasions on this channel, and more so on the John the Jansenist channel, that I am about as religious as they come. And as a person who studies the Bible, specifically to reprove myself in my own faith, there is nothing that I am more petrified of than a guy who subjectively comes along and states, I am called. I am called to do this. This is the exact same sort of nonsense that we got when George W. Bush first declared his candidacy back in 1999. And I'll tell all of you right now, I'm hearing some very loud echoes of the past right now in hearing this. But before I get into further detail about my problems with Rick Perry, and they are many, I would sooner have Michelle Bachmann as president than this guy. I just need to go into just a little bit regarding my issue with the media and how the media has basically created this whole phenomenon, just like they created the Fred Thompson phenomenon last time around. Nobody that I know of is dissatisfied with the current field of candidates. We have a good wide variety of choices here. The only reason why anybody would think that the field of candidates is weak is because the damn mainstream media keeps repeating it like a religious mantra over and over again. Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, the Republican field is weak, need more candidates to enter the race. That's insulting to my intelligence and to the intelligence of anybody else who is out there and actually paying attention to the current campaign. We have more than enough candidates. The last thing that we need is another orthodox nutjob neocon clone. We've already got that in Rick Santorum, and also to a somewhat lesser extent with Herman Cain. But now we're going to get the fellow with the smooth-talking Texas accent. He's going to get in there, and he's going to explain to everybody the way it's going to go. We're going to return to cowboy politics. Let's forget about economics. Let's forget about foreign policy. Let's forget about internal spending issues, revenue issues, and let's forget about issues of internal policy overall. No. We don't need to talk about any of that stuff. We don't need to talk about the logistical functions of government. Because after all, we are called. We are being called. I remember back in the 80s, I saw a stand-up Sam Kinison. I was young at the time. I was like 8 years old. And he was mocking Pat Robertson for making the same sort of nonsensical claims that Governor Perry is, that he is called, that God is telling him to do this. God is not telling you to seek higher office, Mr. Perry. God is telling you that you need to obey His commandments. And let's go through the two principal commandments, the ones that are up from which the Ten Commandments are brought forth. These is a paraphrase of what Jesus said in the Gospel. The law consists of this, that you love God with your whole heart, and that you love your neighbor as you would love yourself. The question is, does Rick Perry love his neighbors? Well, I would argue that since he is a governor, that his neighbors are the entire people of Texas. And I can answer this question with a resounding no. Because Rick Perry, through either omission or through capitulation, has become party to the nonsense that goes on in the airports in the state of Texas. He has capitulated to the thuggish brutes in the federal government, Department of Homeland Security, and in the TSA. As far as I'm concerned, Rick Perry might as well be getting all lovey-dovey with these 5- and 6-year-old kids that are getting molested at airports himself. And he might as well be inspecting old people's adult diapers for bombs. And let's talk about the Trans-Texas Corridor, which would have displaced thousands of farmers in Texas, depriving them of their property, all in the name of bringing in more commerce from Mexico, a country that we have no political dominion over. They have their own government, and their own government can see to their own various internal policies. Tell me, is that a man who loves his neighbor? Is that a person who does what he can in defense of his neighbor? I don't think so. And then also there's the issue of Mr. Perry's religious affiliation. I'm often somewhat rough on candidates depending on what denomination they belong to, because I've studied a lot of these denominations. I've been of a particular study regarding John Wesley and the people that were involved in forming the Methodist Church and how the Methodist Church evolved over the 19th century. And there is very little that disconnects Methodism from the fruitcake Pentecostalism that Sarah Palin engages in. They're basically, most Methodist churches are tied in with the charismatic movement. And so you got all of that belief in spiritual gifts and being able to perform miracles by willing your faith strong enough. It's basically a cloaked version of necromancy. And there's nothing whatsoever that I have read in the gospel that leads me to believe that a person can affect supernatural outcomes through the act of prayer. Prayer is meant for the correction of the believer. It is not an appeal for God to do something. God is going to do what God is going to do. I think there was a particular quote actually by Bill Hicks in which he was saying with regards to the famed Judas Priest debacle back in the early 90s, where they were being accused of killing their fans with subliminal messages. Bill Hicks said very eloquently to all of this crap about, the devil made me do this, the devil made me do that. He says, what can oppose the will of God? Bill Hicks probably accidentally stumbled upon the concept of sovereign grace and the omnipotent dominion of God with that rather witty retort. And that's something that all of us need to ask ourselves right now. Because I'm predicting right now that Rick Perry is going to crash and burn. The memory of George W. Bush is still seared into the minds of most of the people that vote in primaries. They know that George W. Bush was the reason why Obama was elected. They don't want to get him reelected by putting George W. Bush's doppelganger in the opposing podium. Not going to work. So I'll ask all of you, when Rick Perry crashes and burns, do you think the will of God will have been thwarted? Or do you think that Rick Perry's will have been thwarted? I think we both know the answer to that question. And for all of my non-religious subscribers, I apologize for bringing religion into this, but religion is basically all that Rick Perry is arguing right now with regards to his candidacy. It's what embodies his candidacy. He might as well be dressing up like the Methodist Jesus, which in my opinion is a complete abomination. It's bad enough that you're actually making icons and idols of Jesus, but basically depicting him as some sort of wimpy little hippie with flowing hair and effeminate features. That's just an insult. In my opinion, the entire concept upon which that image is based is just revolting. Anybody who has read the Bible knows for a fact that Jesus was not some pansy pushover who was going around saying, "Dude, peace, love, and a big bong." This is the same guy who fashioned whips out of a couple of gourds and basically forcefully removed over a dozen money changers from the temple. Basically chased an entire gang of people out just by himself. Well, anyway, that's this rant for tonight. Until next time, with prudence to myself and benevolence to all of you, good evening.